Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Not my company, but a company from a neighboring building. They had an entire area devoted to foosball, pinball, billiards, console gaming, and videoke booths on the ground floor, and it was clearly visible because of the glass windows on street level. Oddly enough, nobody ever used them, and the place was almost always empty save for a few people who used the internet kiosks. When I learned a friend worked there, I asked why nobody would want to take the opportunity to use the awesome-looking recreational facility. He told me that people who do use the facility often found it used against them during performance evaluations, even when their use wasn't excessive at all. After a while, word got around and they started avoiding the place altogether. The irony is that their recruitment ads always touts a culture of work hard, play hard. When I went to firm drinks in a public bar and the firm's fun committee handed out song sheets and a choir of employees led by a bad guitarist sang a song about how great the firm was to the tune of "'Cause I'm Happy," we were expected to sing along. It was at that moment I realized I was in a cult. My last job was an independent school in the UK, the wealthy type. During a period of streamlining, the entire faculty were called into a hall and told in upbeat terms that we were struggling to make ends meet. Salaries were too high, perks were too abundant, and spending was unsustainable. For clarity, salaries weren't too high and perks were practically non-existent. Spending was definitely unsustainable, however, in part because they were spending hundreds of thousands redesigning the senior staff offices to hide all the cabling and install proper wood paneling. So then they started listing off perks and assigning them a value. For example, free parking. Well, no S. The school has a lot of land and isn't in a city. Why would you charge? Secondly, nice surroundings. Well, again, no S. That's part of your marketing appeal. Long holidays? Nice try, but I work all holiday. They didn't even get as far as telling me what they planned to do with my job and pay. I was gone in less than 3 months. I was working at a startup. I put that in quotes because this place was a startup for over 8 years and continued to refer to itself as a startup until it reached break even. I put my heart and soul into that place, worked nights and weekends, all for a salary that looked on the slightly high side of average for 40 hours a week, but stunk for the far more common 60+ hours. I fought tooth and nail to get the business-critical application rewritten from the ground up, as it had been written by a contractor who had retained ownership of the source code, so the company had no ability to modify code or even properly investigate software faults, and there were plenty of those. So I had only 3 requirements. 1, the company must have the source code. 2, it must be written by a developer that understood SQL, aka a different developer to version 1.0. And 3, it was given enough prior notice to write a complete project specification beyond the skeleton of website plus HADB plus backend stuff to interface with government API. Finally, the CEO let me know that the project to write Business App version 2.0 had budget approval. Oh, frabjous glory day! Then things got worse. It was being written by the same one-man developer who wrote version 1.0, who was once again retaining all rights to source code and who was being retained on a very generous contract to provide ongoing support. And he was already working on it without a proper project specification, just he knows what he's doing. That's when I knew I would have to leave soon trademarked. Very soon trademarked. Finally, as I approached my 8-year anniversary, the CEO announced that the company had finally reached profitable status. He was right now signing the checks for the first ever dividend payment to the shareholders. For nearly 8 years, they'd stymied my request for salary increases with "not this year" / "no money" / "poor startup." Well, surely now that the company was making a profit, they could bring me up to compensate for the years of watching inflation eat my salary from the bottom up. I had a review meeting with the CEO and a director. The director gushed over how I had single-handedly pulled the company through the dark times, how the company would not have made it to the present day to break even if it had not been for my personal efforts over the last years. The CEO then informed me that, effective immediately, my salary was being increased by $1,000. On a 40-hour work week, that's slightly less than 50 cents an hour given the hours I actually worked. It was more like 30 cents an hour. Given what inflation had done to my salary, the skill set required, and responsibilities involved in my role, it should have been more than 10 times that. The CEO then offered me a one-time bonus of $1,500 if I could get the developer's new application into production within the next 3 months. I responded that I couldn't even get it through functional testing in the next 3 months, as it required a test connection to be established in a government-controlled data center, which would take anywhere up to 2 months to get installed correctly, and we couldn't even start that until the CEO approved the expenditure, which had been sitting on his desk for so long that I'd have to get the vendors to requote it. I went back to my office and called a recruiter. Less than a month later, I handed in my notice. Within 3 months, I had sold my house and moved to a different city. Within 12 months, in my new and far less stressful position, I earned more than 150% of my previous salary. Quitting turned out to be the best thing I ever did at that company. I only wish I'd done it sooner. This is what the woman who interviewed me said. Here at Cheapskate Architects, we don't often do all-nighters for our customers, but when we do, it's a real pizza party. Also, we don't pay overtime, we do it for the love. And your wage is $22K even though you are an architect. And also, I won't be there because I'm HR management because I'm married to the director. Yes, we need an HR department even though there's 3 employees. Pizza Hut. Where will Pizza Hut take you? During the interview, I was told, the work is hard, but we feel like a family and we can always be about the bad customers after a shift. The people there were horrible. The managers made you do 2 people's jobs for less money. I was paid minimum wage for my age, $4 an hour, and the company purposely brought on 16-year-olds for that reason. I was also told that they didn't have enough money to pay me, so my shift was canceled. I was told I'd be paid to complete my training, and I wasn't. Our manager would fling the corks of Prosecco bottles at the waitresses to make them scared. There would be regular breakdowns from cooks and waiters. I would regularly get screamed at in front of the whole restaurant for silly things like the knives and forks not being straight enough, even though they would leave me by myself, as in, I was the only waiter still working 1 week after my first shift. The waitresses would always be about the other people in the restaurant and would shout at me for asking questions, even on my first day. At one point, an outside chef was brought in from a different restaurant, and he didn't realize he had to wash up cutlery because he doesn't have to at his place. That's an entirely separate job. So we ran out of cutlery, and the 2 more experienced waitresses, instead of helping me and washing up the cutlery or teaching me how to do it myself, would just hoard the cutlery so it was me that would run out, then my manager would have another go at me. F that place. I'm in management, and we just got the message that bonuses for the last financial year were severely cut across the business, probably going to receive 30% of our total potential at best. Then attended our financial end-of-the-year results meeting the next day to be told that net profits were 18% up, nearly $1 billion total, and the best performance in years, all thanks to us. Okay, planning on leaving now. OMG, I went through something similar in 2000. Was working for a financial firm. 1,800 employees with a sales force of 200. I was one of the salesmen. We had our annual meeting in April. It was a big affair. Most of the employees attended, and the CEO gave a big speech about how the previous year was the best in the company's history, blah blah blah. The next month, May, we each submitted memos basically justifying why we qualified for, or should qualify for, bonuses at the end of June. I wrote mine out and explained the sales growth in my territory over the course of the previous 12 months and what percentage my sales were out of last year's total sales. Coming off the company's best year ever, it should have been a slam dunk, right? All of us were excited about how much we'd have coming in June. June rolls around and my bonus is 0. 0. But it's not just me, it's all over the sales floor. Less than 20% of the sales force got bonuses, and holy S, everyone was peed. All the supervisors were dealing with angry subordinates, the sales manager was too, and even the VP and director above him. Everyone was furious and insubordinate, angry accusatory emails were flying, and the company was facing a mutiny. It got worse when it came out that the supervisors were offered bonuses that they could determine for themselves. Most of them took them, but a couple, knowing their subordinates wouldn't be getting anything, refused. My supervisor took his. When it came out, he tried to explain to his sales team about how he felt it was justified and how hard he worked. He ended up with people screaming at him about how they felt the same, but they didn't get jack S. So for a week or so, things on the floor came to a stop. A lot of people just didn't show up, and the ones that did were angry. I came in and started reading Monster.com ads at my desk. I also stopped selling anything or answering my phone. When confronted by my boss, I told him that as soon as I got the bonus my sales justified, I'd start working again. Until then, I'd be coming in late, reading and responding to want ads, and leaving early. He could expect me to keep that up until I found another job or was fired. The following day, I was sent to the regional sales manager's office. She said she'd heard about my work stoppage and asked me to explain myself. I told her that if she heard about it from my supervisor, then she already knew why I wasn't working and I didn't need to explain it again. She tried buddying up to me, being friendly, then being stern, then being angry. I kept my composure and told her that the longer the company held out on my bonus, the longer it was going to miss out on sales from my territory. I then gave her my average daily amount of sales from the previous year, quantified what the total loss would be for a week of me not selling, and how much cheaper it would be just to pay me the money I was owed and get me back to selling. Then I thanked her for her time and told her I'd be leaving work as soon as I left her office. And I did. The following day I came in, checked my emails, some of which were farewell emails from coworkers who quit over their stolen bonuses, and sat on Monster.com until I was told to go to the office of the National Sales Manager. He's the gatekeeper. He's in charge of all 200 of us. He told me he understood that I was upset and could see why. I asked him if withholding the bonuses from 80% of his sales force was his idea or someone else's. He didn't answer. He did tell me that I would be getting a check on Monday, and could I please go back to work now? I told him I'd be going back to my desk, but wouldn't start until the check was in my hand. When I went back and checked my emails, yep, more defections. The next day, an email went out to the entire sales force. Management had taken a look at the numbers, reevaluated the financials, and determined that June bonuses would be issued shortly. The email also apologized for the delay and reminded us that as salesmen, we were the core of the company and our hard work was appreciated. I also received another email, this time from the National Sales Manager, who told me while bonuses were scheduled for Monday, he'd be walking my check to my desk the following day. The following day, I showed up, sat down, and shortly afterwards, the National Sales Manager walked up and handed me my bonus check. I thanked him and handed him my resignation effective immediately. In my resignation letter, I requested that a check for my unused vacation time please be cut and given to me before I left the building. When he finished reading it, I told him I'd clean out my desk while I waited for the vacation check. While I was doing that, one of my coworkers also resigned effective immediately. We were walked out at the same time and ended up getting drunk at the bar across the street. I learned later from coworkers that remained that, even though the company issued the bonuses, they lost about 20% of the sales force in the following 2 months. Gotta love corporate greed. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.